Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to the breakout session. My name is Stephanie Scott. I'm the owner of Simple Surrogacy based in Dallas, Texas. We're a full service agency, been in business since 2002. Had just a little under 1,300 babies born through our program to date. We do everything from surrogacy to egg donation, coordinating your medical, your legal, travel, birth certificates, passports, helping you with nannies, child care classes, everything that you would need to know about raising a baby from start to finish. We work mostly with surrogates in Texas. About 75% of my surrogates are based in the Texas area between Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. Right now our average matching time is under 3 months. Some of our intended parents have been getting matched in as little as 1 to 2 weeks recently in the last 3 to 4 months. We actually give intended parents references. You get about 30 to 40 references of intended parents who've been through our program recently that can attest to matching times, costs, whole process timeline. Right now we're averaging about 16 months from start to finish. So from the time you sign a retainer agreement to the time you're holding a baby. We do, as far as legal, if you are a married couple, legally married and can show a marriage certificate, Texas is a pre-birth order state, believe it or not. We allow 2 men on a birth certificate. It's listed as parent 1, parent 2, and that happens the day of birth. So there is no waiting period, no second parent adoption, or parentage orders. Does anybody have any questions so far? Go ahead. If you are single, a lot of the time you can still get a pre-birth order. So if you're using direct eggs or donor eggs and you have an egg donor contract, then our attorney Lauren Duffer can also do that. Anybody else? So I'll talk a little bit about the financial aspects of surrogacy. Right now in the state of Texas, if you match with a surrogate and use a Texas clinic, keep your travel costs down, use the Texas attorneys. A singleton in and out the door is $115,000 average. I just did the cost analysis this last week for all the intended parents who have been in our program the last 12 months. So $115,000 if you have a singleton and $130,000 if you have twins. We still have a lot of twins, or a lot of surrogates who are willing to carry twins. It's about a 75% difference between the surrogates who are willing to do double embryo transfers and the ones who are not. Most of the ones who are not willing to do a double embryo transfer have already been a surrogate before, carried twins, and they don't want to do it again. So, so those are the ones, if you're looking for an experienced surrogate, most of the ones that you're going to find are only going to do a single embryo transfer. Right now, as far as the costs go, the $115,000 to $130,000, that is going to include everything. So that is your legal, your medical, IVF expenses, medications for your surrogate, your donor and surrogate compensation, agency fees, life insurance, maternity clothes, you name it. Now the only time it ever goes above and beyond that is if you have a complicated pregnancy. Let's say your surrogate went in and started labor early and we needed her on bed rest, or the doctor ordered her bed rest, then she would get lost wages if she's a working surrogate. But we also cap that amount so you know from day one when you match with the surrogate what you're in for, worst case scenario. So bed rest compensation is capped at 3 months from viability. Viability in the state of Texas starts at 24 weeks of pregnancy. So if your child is born at that, they usually survive. So that's when we do the basis for viability. So if she goes on bed rest, it's usually not going to be for 3 months, but in the event, worst case scenario was, then you know that 3 months is all you're going to pay. Go ahead.
Does the total budget change from year to year? Like, has cost gone up?
It does. It has gone up. Last year we were averaging more about $108,000 to $110,000 for a singleton pregnancy and closer to $120,000 for twins. Go ahead.
Are you doing the legal in-house or in subcontract?
We subcontract out. I was told a long time ago when we did have an attorney in-house that it was a conflict of interest, and I was like, fine, I'll go somewhere else and get another attorney. So we actually work with Texas Family Law. It's Lauren Duffer, and we've been working with her for a little over 12 years now. And she was actually the first attorney in the state of Texas to get 2 men on a birth certificate. Anybody else with questions? Go ahead.
Can you tell us about the screening process?
So our surrogates go through a rigorous screening. They go through financial backgrounds, criminal background checks. We do psychological evaluations. We have several psychologists on staff that work for us. 2 of them are former intended parents themselves that have gone through our program. And they're the ones who not only interview you, but interview our surrogates and their spouses. We do a employment verification on them. We want to make sure that they are, in fact, truly employed. We get pay stubs to go over their lost wages, so you know what their lost wages are going to be from day one. We also do address verification, 10-year background, just to make sure that they haven't been moving around, they're in a stable living environment. The financial background is more to make sure that they're not using their compensation to live. We want them to be able to live on their own and be able to support their families on their own without the use of this compensation. We want the compensation to be an added bonus for being a surrogate and being a wonderful person that, you know, just handed you a baby. Lots of my surrogates use their compensation for things like they want to go back to college, or they're putting a down payment on a home for their family, that kind of thing.
Do you do house visits?
We do not do house visits. Now we do pictures of the inside and outside of the home, but we do not have somebody go over there and actually do a home study on them. We know we do, like I said, the address verification, so we look up their address. We know where they live at. We know what, of course, what their mortgage or their rent is, stuff like that. We don't have surrogates that are like off living in trailers with no electricity or anything like that. So, you know, these women are they're well off. You know, a lot of them are nurses. When we have a lot of deliveries at some of these hospitals and the nurses get to see you in the delivery room holding that baby, crying your eyes out, they tend to want to be a surrogate too. So, you know, we have a lot of educated surrogates that are, you know, doing fine just on their own. They just want to help another family achieve what they've had. Go ahead.
What's your surrogacy acceptance rate?
It's pretty low, actually. Just in this past year, we've had some really wild people applying with us that I'm like, are you serious? Did you even read my website? So right now we have on average about maybe 150 applications a month, and I'm lucky if I get to accept 15 of those. So it's, you know, it's just one of those things. I don't think people read all the information, which I'm going to tell you from day one. If you're going to join my program, please read the information. I wrote it for a reason. It's very detailed, and it's going to tell you everything that you need to know about this process from start to finish. The requirements on surrogates are they have to have had a great medical history. No complications with pregnancy. We don't want hypertension, diabetes, preeclampsia, somebody who's, you know, been on anti-anxiety or antidepressants, even painkillers, narcotics. If you live in the state of Washington, Colorado, California, or Alaska now, no, you cannot smoke weed and be a surrogate. You know, like, I'm sorry, I get that it's legal in your state, but you still can't do it. So we had to actually change up our application to say illegal drugs to even legal drugs. Can't take those either. So it's a lot to go over to accept a surrogate. I mean, there's so many different variables. Making sure she has a good support system, making sure she's financially stable, she has a good medical history. All the medical records from all of her past pregnancies and deliveries are actually reviewed by a reproductive endocrinologist. So he's looking for, you know, just to make sure she's an ideal candidate in the first place before we even accept her into the program. I guess we're getting kicked out. Go ahead.
Does your program have like a birth guarantee? So if like there's miscarriages, there's no additional fees, they kind of go back.
I can barely hear you.
Or do you guys have like a birth guarantee in the program? So like you're guaranteed that you will get a baby even if there are miscarriages throughout the process?
They are with the clinic. The clinic offers like unlimited IVF packages. As far as our agency, we don't stop working for you until you have a baby. That's included in our retainer agreement.
Are they required to be screened by a psychologist?
Yes, yes. They all go through psychological evaluations, and so do their spouses. Go ahead.
What are the fertility clinics that you work at most frequently?
I work with a lot of them here, and I'll work with just about any fertility clinic. I try to.
Assuming it's a Texas
A Texas one, a good example is Fertility Specialist of Texas, Dr. Goldstein. Right now we've got about an 87% success rate with him on first transfers ending in live births. So it's pretty high. And he also is just generally a nice guy. So
The price that you indicated was inclusive of the IVF and
yes, it includes everything except for incidentals, like if your surrogate were to go on bed rest or something like that and have lost wages.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that price?
The price?
Yeah.
115 for a singleton and 130 for twins. Go ahead.
And the maximum price for bed rest should it go? 3 months?
It's 3 months. So depending on what your surrogate makes, let's say she makes $12 an hour and she works 40 hours a week, which is something we verify before we even accept her, what her hours are, how many days of work she, or how many days she works a week, what hours, all of that. So when you get a profile of a surrogate, it's going to tell you her hourly wage or salary, and you can cap that at 3 months. That is total in and out the door, which you would be worst case scenario.
Would that cost also be inclusive of legal fees for parents or IPs that aren't from Texas?
Correct.
The father screening happens there in Texas, or can it be done also?
You can do screening here with just about any fertility clinic. They'll accept like your infectious disease screening and all of that. You can even have your semen sample shipped, but we actually require that first visit with your surrogate, so you might as well just come in and get it all done at once. Go ahead.
If you have dual citizenship with EU country, you take care of that as well.
I'm sorry?
If you have dual citizenship with the EU country, you take care of
The passports.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we get, in state of Texas, you get your birth certificate 6 days after birth. That's even with 2 fathers going on the birth certificate. So 6 days after birth, birth certificate, 3 to 4 days after that, you have passports in hand.
Any major differences between Texas and California?
Not really. I mean, well, I mean, as far as like cost or just the passports?
Then overall, the entire process.
Yeah, there's a major difference between Texas and California. California, I do California surrogacy too. I have intended parents there. I have some surrogates there. It's typically about $35,000 more expensive. Just between medical, surrogate compensation, insurance costs, lost wages, you name it. So that's a pretty good college fund to start, just saying. Anybody else?
Can we have a surrogate name on the birth certificate?
It depends. Are you talking about like being able to go back to another country?
To have dual citizenship, yes.
We have done it in some cases. It's case by case and it has to go through the attorney.
For France.
France is one of them, yes.
Good.
What we usually do is we keep the mother on the birth or the surrogate mother on the birth certificate, and we amend the birth certificate later once you're back. Anybody else? They're about to kick us out of this room.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How are social things like smoking, drinking, things like that monitored during the pregnancy?
Well, we can't live with them, so we can't watch their every move. I will tell you this, as far as like our coordinators go, they are on top of their surrogates. They watch their social media accounts. We're on their Facebook, Twitter, Tumblrs, you name it. We've seen some things happen here and there, like we had a surrogate, and I know I'm being recorded for this one, so I apologize, but we had a surrogate a couple of years ago that was riding 4-wheelers on Facebook. And I'm like, the coordinator called me and told me about it, and I was like, how could she not know that you can't do that? You know, like, there's no riding 4-wheelers when you're 6 months pregnant. So, you know, those are just things that come up. I mean, as far as like smoking, you know, narcotics, anything like that, you can have your surrogate drug tested. It's part of your gestational surrogacy agreement. My hope for you in this process when you match, whether it's through me or somebody else, is you match with somebody you feel like you can trust from day one. You don't want to have to call your surrogate and worry, what are you eating today? And did you have a cup of coffee? And you don't want to do that. You want to have an open, honest relationship where you can feel like, I can trust her. I trust that she's making good choices for herself and my child. But in the event you were worried about it, you could have her drug tested in an instant.
What are the implications if she tested positive?
then she would be in breach of her surrogacy contract, and she would not, unless she could cure the breach, which, I mean, at that point, if you've already done the drugs or smoked a cigarette, you're already in breach, so she wouldn't receive any more compensation.